I don't know if there's anything 2020-ish about the Blackcaps, but we do have some Blackcaps.
No, it's very 2019-ish, actually.
There you go. Bit of Blackcaps cricket wildcard. So on Sunday maybe it was. No, Monday. We're recording this on Tuesday. I wrote about the whole New Zealand cricket 2020 landscape and just how all the different pieces to the puzzle relate to each other. Blackcaps 2020 international cricket, the Super Smash, Big Bash as well, because we've got Colin Monroe is off to the Big Bash to join Adam Milne, and all of that is really interesting, let alone other bits and bobs that I did write about as well. And then today, well, like later yesterday, late Monday evening, early Tuesday, there was the Blackcaps T20 squad was announced. Also the Test squad wildcard to face West Indies, but the Test squad is pretty stock standard, other than this fella Colin D and another fella Grandhome, which was a bit weird. Just on the little graphic they did for the Test squad announcements, like every player's name is on a single line, and then Colin de Grandhome's name is just Colin D. Next line, Grandhome. So it's like two separate jokers. I found that funny. What have you... Like, I'm just curious, Wildcard, just how when you see Blackcaps T20 squad, you see Devin Conway selected, Kyle Jamieson is selected as well as someone who didn't play Blackcaps T20 cricket last summer. He played Test cricket and ODI cricket, but didn't play T20 cricket. I'm not sure if you caught a couple of the vibes I explored in my T20 landscape wrap up, but I'm just curious, what are you thinking about the Blackcaps T20 squad from any angle? But I'm always reminded by what, like you've said a few times, that the Blackcaps T20 team is where the younger players are brought in to like acquaint themselves with Blackcaps cricket. And over this like 48 hours, for some reason I've thought a lot about the messaging coming out of New Zealand cricket and the Blackcaps with regards to like their priorities. So for example, the Super Smash is sold as a priority of New Zealand cricket. However, it's not delivered in that way because there's none of the best players are playing. So it's like it's viewed as a headline act of the summer without headline talent. And the T20 squad is like based on the number of T20 internationals we have and the extensive T20 schedule, which makes sense with the 2 World Cups. These are all the pieces that I've written about, so it's all very complex and convoluted. However, there is a heavy T20 schedule, so we're told that T20 cricket, through that idea, is a priority. However, when you get to squad announcements, it's clear that Test cricket is the priority, and there is still that vibe of younger players getting their opportunity through the T20 setup. Not specifically with Devin Conway and Kyle Jamieson, because as I said, Jamieson played Test cricket, then ODI cricket. Devin Conway's 29 years old, so it kind of applies to Conway as in a sense of Conway getting his first opportunity with the Blackcaps in the T20 group. And then you look at the players who are coming in for the third game. Jamieson, Southey and Taylor all drop out, one would assume because of the Test series, and then Doug Bracewell, Scott Kugelheim and Mark Chapman come in to the T20 squad, let alone the idea of like, do we have other Blackcaps viewing this as just like we need to get our best T20 team together ahead of this double World Cup T20 situation? I don't know, Wildcard. What do you make of it all? I blabbled on a bit there, but feel free to pick up, anywhere along that line.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had a few thoughts on this. One of them, in keeping with the Colin D and the Grandhome selections, I also got confused reading down the New Zealand cricket, what do you call it? Just the article on their website announcing everything, for a similar but different reason, which is that normally they have the picture things in like the square Instagram format shape, and here they had them sort of halved off, and so I was looking at it trying to like pinch my phone screen to expand it and like where's the rest of the squad before counting them up and realizing, oh, they've just used a smaller picture here for some reason. And so that probably reflects more on me than on New Zealand cricket there, but it confused me at first. And I was in the car this morning as well, and on Radio New Zealand they were interviewing Gavin Larson, and I thought, oh, this is lovely to hear Gavin Larson talk about. Well, of course, it was absolutely infuriating because it was another example that when it comes to the Blackcaps, their relationship with Kiwi media, it's very, very chummy, and it means that there are not difficult questions. And so for like it was only a little, 3 or 4 minute little chat thing there after the sports news, basically. So there wasn't ever going to be too much there, but all they talked about was like, there were about 4 questions about Kane Williamson being injured and how badly is he injured and how soon will he be back 100%? Will he have to play through this injury for a while? Do we have to worry about him missing more time later on? Should he be missing any time at all, or should he just be playing in these 2020s? Why isn't Trent Bolt playing in these 2020s? And then a whole lot of questions about Devin Conway as well. And it was like, these are not the fun narratives. I want to know about like how steady Tom Blundell's spot as an opener is. I want to know about Colin de Grandhomme's injury, which has seen him picked for the test team, but not in the 2020 team. Like, I want to know about, I don't know, all these things. Are they considering like AJ Patel as a spinner? Is he in the test squad? Is he just there sort of as a backup option? I don't know. There's a lot of much more interesting ways those things could have gone, but I don't think we'll get too much of that until we actually see teams and actually get evidence of how things are going to look. I suppose we stick to the 2020s for now, but there's the main theme that I saw from both these squads is that I guess there's a lot of like there's a lot of people right now who would be very happy if they could go back in time to 2019 and maybe do some things differently, or just like straight up I don't know. It's one of the like, could I stop the pandemic if I went back in a time machine, or at least just to get like the future back to what the past used to be. The Blackcaps seem to have actually achieved that goal, though. I don't know if they've got a time machine of their own or whatever, but they've picked a squad for both these teams that is exactly the same squad as they would have picked this time a year ago, probably. I mean, Kyle Jamison's come on the scene a little more recently, sort of at the start of this year, before everything got weird, and then Devin Conway obviously becoming eligible more recently, but he'd have been in the team last year if he could have been. It's just, yeah, we've had 11 out of 15 out of 16 days. The 16th day of the first half of the Plunket Shield is currently ongoing as we're recording. So we've basically had a full 4 rounds of Plunket Shield action, but we haven't had any 2020 stuff. And there's a 2020 squad that needed to be picked. So really all you can go by with that squad is either picking players based on performances in different formats, which maybe doesn't, so sometimes it meshes. So it's one of my theories that it's like, in terms of compatibility, I think the different formats are like PlayStations, where you can play, I think I haven't played a PlayStation in a very long time, but I assume it's still the case where you could play a PS1 game on a PS2, but you couldn't play a PS2 game on a PS1, you know what I mean? So I think players who are good in the longer formats can slide down to 2020. Like, you got a sound test match technique, you can probably score runs as well in 2020 stuff. If you can score 2020 runs but haven't proven yourself in longer formats, that transition is a lot harder to make. But so, I mean, you could have picked some dudes based on how well they win in Plunket Shield stuff, and arguably they have with Kyle Jamison, although I think that would have been inevitable anyway, with how well he started his Blackcaps stuff, and yeah, in the ODIs and in the test matches, especially against India. So I don't know. There just wasn't a whole lot of new evidence that was out there for them to go from, so they kind of just picked a team that looked exactly like what they would have done a year ago. Like Hamish Bennett, I don't think he's played a Plunket Day. He might not even play 4 days anymore. That probably is a smart thing if that's the case. Like, if this is his avenue to international cricket still for his sort of like little, not swan song, what's the word for like the late career renaissance type thing, then sweet as, like, focus on that. Why not? He's a dude who's had a lot of injuries, so you do what you get in where you can. And then I guess the most interesting one here is, well, obviously Daryl Mitchell is playing. Daryl Mitchell and Jimmy Neesham both being there is a symptom of de Grandhomme not being there, but that could actually, because de Grandhomme's 2020 performances haven't been fantastic. He's been picked largely as a batsman and hasn't scored enough runs to justify that. Neesham and Mitchell are both better bowling options in 2020s. I think if you are going to pick you'd have you'd have room for an extra player or two in a World Cup squad, but I do think this is interesting for de Grandhomme's place in the 2020 team. I think that's one aspect of this. And then I think the other aspect of this, which is far and away the most important, or not most important, but the most interesting thing to me, I guess, from all this, is that just looking at the 2020 squad in particular, well, first of all, the most interesting of all these squads was the New Zealand A squad by a mile, because that was the only one where we didn't get basically the same players as we would have got, like, as we would have expected 9-10 months ago. But one of the interesting things from that A squad was that they didn't pick players, the A games would clash with this 2020 series, and I think there were a couple players who were picked to start and then picked to leave. I think Conway is one of them, who's going to play the first bit of the games and then disappear, and then it was sort of a hint that maybe he'd be involved in something else. And notably, Glenn Phillips wasn't there, having played New Zealand A stuff a year ago, which got me thinking, well, maybe Glenn Phillips is going to be in the 2020 squad then. And then, lo and behold, he is, and Colin Monroe isn't. And there's a quote here in the New Zealand cricket thing, which I'll throw back to you. It says, Stead also clarified the decision to omit Colin Monroe from the 2020 squad. Quote, so this is Gary Stead. With Colin heading to the Big Bash and therefore unavailable for the Pakistan T20 series pre-Christmas, so that's the Pakistan series as well, that's not just this West Indies one, but the next one, the selectors are keen to look at other options at the top of the order. Which sounds to me like they've moved on. Like, that doesn't sound very promising for Colin Monroe coming back into the team after that Pakistan series next year and moving towards the World Cup, plural, World Cups plural. That doesn't sound too great considering Colin Monroe has well and truly lost his spot in the ODI squad, was never really I think he did play one test back in the day, didn't he? But never really a serious option in the test team, although arguably his Plunket Shield record says he should have at some point. We might have seen the last of Colin Monroe as an international cricketer there, Doc.
So, in writing about it today, I included screenshotted two paragraphs from the press release about these Blackcaps squads. The first was about Glenn Phillips, because it says, Auckland Aces batsman Glenn Phillips has earned a T20 recall after impressing at the recent Caribbean Premier League. So with regards to that, Glenn Phillips has been in the top 5 batsmen at the Caribbean Premier League for the last 3 years. He is like top 10, I think I found. Let me just look it up right now. He's the second best Kiwi to ever play in the Caribbean Premier League behind Colin Monroe. And he is 14th overall in total CPL runs. So most of the dudes on that ranking started playing Caribbean Premier League in 2013. Glenn Phillips is 14th overall forever, having only started in 2017. So the New Zealand cricket, they alluded to Glenn Phillips having a good 2020 CPL. Glenn Phillips has been the best batsman of the CPL for like the last 3 years. So I'll get to Colin Monroe, but I think another player of a similar ilk as far as the best way to frame this is, are you part of a Blackcaps New Zealand T20 First 11? Based on what I've seen from Glenn Phillips in New Zealand, for New Zealand, as well as what he's done overseas in T20 tournaments, I'd suggest that Glenn Phillips is part of a, maybe not quite the first 11 strictly, but just like, okay, top 15 2020 players from New Zealand, let's go. Glenn Phillips has to be there. Maybe Hamish Rutherford doesn't have to be in that group. However, Hamish Rutherford has consistently performed pretty good in the Super Smash, and this year in England's T20 Blast, he was one of the best batsmen there. But he doesn't get a look in. So that leads me to Colin Monroe, because what Colin Monroe has basically done here, Wildcard, is something that I have suggested would happen, and already has happened, with lesser notable players, like someone like Mitchell McClenaghan or Anton Devcic. This is the most pressing issue in Kiwi cricket right now, is a T20 player deciding to play Big Bash instead of Blackcaps T20 cricket. So as you set it up nicely. Colin Monroe, maybe if the stars align, he might play ODI cricket. He's not playing Test cricket, and his decision is, okay, I have a Big Bash opportunity in front of me. If I take that Big Bash opportunity, because of how New Zealand cricket have created this problem themselves, because they schedule their T20 cricket at the same time as the Big Bash. So I wrote, this is part of the T20 landscape stuff I talk about, because if you have the Super Smash at the same time as Blackcaps T20 cricket and the Big Bash, there's no imports coming from overseas to make the Super Smash better, and there's no Blackcaps to make the Super Smash better, so the Super Smash is kinda not a great competition. So these are all New Zealand cricket decisions that have created, not necessarily problems right now, but I can see that this is going to be a interesting issue for New Zealand cricket, because Colin Monroe has basically just said, look, I'm choosing between Blackcaps T20 cricket and the Big Bash. That is the decision. And he has taken up a Big Bash opportunity. So to get to your point, now we are going to see the perspective of New Zealand cricket, because Colin Monroe is going to miss 2 2020 series due to his Big Bash commitments. And fair enough, if I'm in Colin Monroe's shoes, I'm doing the same thing. A lot of these, there's only a small group who are certified T20 players. So all the other players, if they have Test cricket, yeah, you got to commit to New Zealand cricket and Test cricket and ODI cricket. That's fair play. However, if you're just a T20 player, if I'm in Colin Monroe's situation, I'm thinking I can go to Australia, probably earn more money. I'm going to play in front of bigger crowds on a bigger platform at a higher level. Maybe Big Bash is a higher level of T20 cricket than what Blackcaps versus West Indies is going to be. So if you're Colin Monroe, maybe it's an easy choice depending on your vibe. For me, it's an easy choice. If I'm Colin Monroe and I've got a Big Bash opportunity, snap that bad boy up. Do it. However...
Well, also, the one very, very relevant point to that as well is if you're pointing out the financial side of it, he's just lost his Blackcaps Central contract, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he's done that because of the T20 stuff. So it's not necessarily he's lost it and now he wants to pursue other things. Well, maybe it did because he lost his ODI spot. But even if he had a New Zealand cricket contract in this moment, it would still present Colin Monroe with a decision. And if he had a New Zealand contract at this time, choosing BBL, there might be ramifications with the contract. So yeah, from a financial perspective, you got to weigh up how do I make my money here? But it's not you're Like, Colin Monroe would still make decent money if he was playing for the Blackcaps T20 team, just playing games. Because you still get match fees. You get match payments for all the domestic cricket as well. So if Colin
match
Monroe
fees and stuff
is just taking the piss in Plunket Shield, smacking 150 off 20 balls, he's still earning a living. But the most important thing here is what New Zealand cricket do when Colin Monroe returns. Because you were kind of saying that this might be the end of the road for Colin Monroe. However, from a T20 cricket standpoint, if Colin Monroe goes over to the Big Bash and dominates, well, for sure, he's got to be in a Blackcaps T20 first 11. And that's where we will understand the perspective of New Zealand cricket, because if Colin Monroe gets shafted, then we can see that New Zealand cricket do not want their players going over to the Big Bash, taking away from their own Blackcaps T20 cricket and Super Smash. Simply put, if Colin Monroe...
Well, I think we've already seen that.
Well, we haven't, because...
Well, I think
Colin
we've
Monroe...
already seen that, because they only said...
Well, Colin Monroe might come back, and there's going to be... There's a series against Australia after this. So, if Colin Monroe returns from the Big Bash, and granted, he's got to be in good form, and he scores runs in the Big Bash, he should be in the Blackcaps T20 squad for, I think they have 5 games against Australia. So at that point, we're going to see how Colin Monroe is viewed by New Zealand cricket. I don't necessarily put a great deal of stock in what has happened now for the West Indies and the Pakistan series.
Yeah, but like the Gary Stead quote only mentioned the Pakistan series that he was unavailable for. They sort of we'll read it again. With Colin heading to the Big Bash and therefore unavailable for the Pakistan T20 series pre-Christmas, the selectors are keen to look at other batting options at the top of the order. So they're not saying he's unavailable for this series. They're saying he's unavailable for next series. Therefore, we're advertising his job. I think that's pretty writing on the wall there. But the point you make, if he goes to the Big Bash and dominates, you'd be crazy not to put him back in the conversation. But I think they're very clearly thinking beyond him at this point. I mean, they've said it. They've said they're thinking beyond him at this point.
But logistically, he's unavailable for the West Indies series. Because he's going to have to go to Australia. There's quarantines. The Big Bash in Australia... Let me just check when it starts.
Well, it's certainly easier for all involved if he's not in this series, whether he could squeeze it in or not, because they're only it's 3 games in the space of about a week at the end of this month, but yeah.
So the first of T20s starts November 27th, the Big Bash starts on December 10th. So there's basically no way that Colin Monroe could have played against the West Indies. Because he has to go over to Australia. He's got to start training. He's got to do all the logistical stuff that has to be done in 2020. So you're kind of alluding to Colin Monroe being scratched for this series based on his decision to play BBL, and you're kind of saying that the ramifications are already present. I'm a bit more lenient towards what Gary Stead and the Blackcaps are doing for the West Indies and the Pakistan series. Logistically, there's basically no way Colin Monroe could have played against the West Indies. He's definitely unavailable to play against Pakistan. So, the semantics suggested, the semantics are, as you said, the semantics of what Gary Stead said suggests that Colin Monroe was already shafted from the West Indies series. I just think that they didn't really highlight that it was just a unavailability.
Well, do you remember when they dropped Ross Taylor a couple years ago, and then they sort of specifically mentioned that he had been dropped when they could have just come out and said he's still recovering from his eye injury, this was just after the surgery a couple months later. They just didn't cover their asses in the way where they could have and protected Ross Taylor there, and it became a bit of a drama. And remember we wrote a few things about that. That's the funny thing with the semantics when it comes to, Gary Stead wasn't there then, but that was Gavin Larson who was speaking then. But, Gavin Larson is still a selector and still talking. Gary Stead is a very similar character in that these guys they all seem like quite nice dudes. Like, they seem like genuine, considerate blokes, and therefore they're really bad at lying. And therefore, when they get asked to explain certain questions and do want to protect players, they often show their hand a little more than they mean to, which is why it's quite funny, and also often quite telling, reading like the little quotes in the thing to get perspectives, which often I think say more than they meant them to say. But yeah, we shall see.
The important part here at Wildcard is what I referred to with Glenn Phillips, because they said Glenn Phillips has earned a T20 recall after impressing at the recent CPL. So basically, whoever's writing these press releases has no idea like what's actually doing in Kiwi cricket. Because Glenn Phillips has dominated the CPL for a couple of years now and is undeniably one of the best T20 batsmen from Aotearoa right now. So if getting like based on that alone, like they write these things very strangely and they highlight things very strangely. I think back to last summer how every squad announcement like included a list of 5 players, whatever it was, who were unavailable for selection due to injury. And I was like, okay, these dudes didn't get selected, but they're still dudes, kind of going to what you're saying about the just trying to please everyone and be nice to everyone. It was like, like these players are all out injured, and so we're gonna write down the squad, and then we're gonna write down the squad of players unavailable for selection due to injury.
Yeah, as if Adam Milne was going to get in there ahead of Tim Southey or something anyway. Like, this dude wasn't going to get picked, so you don't really need to make excuses for him.
Yeah, and here's the squad of players who no one knows about who didn't get selected as well. Like, it just seems a bit strange. Which I think maybe, like, how are you feeling about New Zealand cricket dramas or antics right now? Like, we've basically highlighted a few little spots of weirdness. I would throw up the A squad as a spot of weirdness as well, considering that the whole Otago Volts seam attack was selected. There's no Canterbury seamers, even though Canterbury have like had the best seam attack of the Plunket Shield thus far. Like, just stuff like that is still happening, and I am curious. Like, I've already got a feeling of like, maybe it's just because I've been in the weeds about this over the last couple of days, writing about the T20 landscape and all that stuff. I'm already feeling a bit of shenanigans coming on Wildcard. And I'm not sure if you can sense it, like, just from what you're getting from New Zealand cricket. And I think the idea of, like, how these teams are being presented to us is interesting. I don't know if it's, like, if I'm overselling it or if I'm just misreading it, but it's hard to gauge, like, how New Zealand cricket and the Blackcaps, like, where they rank their T20 team, where they rank their Super Smash, where they rank their test team, like, or whether New Zealand cricket have priorities here and their priorities are X, Y, and Z. However, the players have their priorities here and their priorities are QRS. Like, it seems like there's just it doesn't seem like everything is in perfect alignment, perfect unison. These are the formats we are targeting. Because if you just look at it, like last summer, there was a lot of ODI cricket. Well, not last summer, but the summer before the World Cup, there was a lot of ODI cricket, and we're building into the World Cup, and it makes sense, and you can see what's happening. Yeah, we want more Test cricket, but we can see that there's an ODI World Cup, and that's the plan. Right now, yeah, we love Test cricket, but let's be honest, the Test Championship is a farce, which was also quite strange in the press release. There was something about, we've had to make a decision on Kane and Trent to prioritise the test matches. There's no secret we're right in the hunt for the World Test Championship final following our 2-0 win over India. and having Trent and Kane fully fit and focused for the upcoming series will be crucial. So I just view the Test Championship as a farce. Like, it's a stupid competition now that they've had to rejig like the points and all that stuff, which was already quite difficult to follow. So it's like there's a priority on Test cricket, and there are two 2020 World Cups that could be a priority if you straight up want to go out and win both of them, which New Zealand could do with the correct planning and evaluation of 2020 talent. But based on the squad selected here, I don't know if that's exactly the case, because I don't think Hamish Bennett is going to take part. I don't think Hamish Bennett's going to bowl one ball in either 2020 World Cup. And it's just like, I'm just a bit confused as to how, like, what priority New Zealand cricket has. What is the focus of cricket matters right now? And as I talk about it, I understand that is a very difficult thing when you're trying to deal with Test cricket, ODI cricket, and T20 cricket. It's quite hard to lay all those things out with a clear, concise plan and list of priorities with what you want to achieve. It's difficult, but I still sense like I get none of that from the Blackcaps and New Zealand cricket right now. How do you feel like the same thing as far as the wider shenanigans New Zealand cricket goes? And then what are your thoughts on, I just keep referring to priorities. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but what, like, just the clarity around different formats and what the focus is.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some level of shenanigans going on, though, isn't there? Like, New Zealand cricket and the Blackcaps organisation tend to be on the more complacent side of things at times, and there's always a tendency to just pick the dudes they picked before, and this is exactly what I was saying about these squads just looking like, and I think the 2020 squad is actually more indicative of this, even though you've got Conway coming in, and you can say, like, Glenn Phillips getting back in with a genuine chance to play a lot. I'm curious to see who opens, actually, because I think both those two would be an option alongside Martin Guptill. Conway would give you the left-hander. Phillips would give you familiarity from those two having done that before for Auckland. So that will be interesting to see how that goes. Who actually literally fills Colin Monroe's boots. But there's always some level of shenanigans going on, and the like, even just looking at the three players who have called up when the three dudes leave for, it's the third 2020, just the third one, when Doug Bracewell, Scott Kugelheim, and Mark Chapman come in. Like, these are also guys who, and like, it's cool to see Chapman in particular coming in, and Bracewell has been bowling well in Plunket Shield too, so it's not like he's not worthy of a recall. But also, these are three dudes who have been given opportunities in the last couple years. Kugelheim, I don't understand why he keeps getting picked when it would have seemed like a one-off game at the end of a 2020 series would have seemed like the perfect opportunity to bowl someone like, I don't know, a Jacob Duffy or someone like that. But apparently not. They've just, again, like, picked a team that could have been the team that they picked a year ago, or even maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's very, very, like, just picking up where they left off kind of thing, and ignoring everything else that's happened since they last played 2020 cricket. So it's confusing, but it's also the first thing of the summer, so I don't, maybe they're just looking for a baseline, I don't know. And also, I guess, probably a point to be, I get the feeling, because Gavin Larson on the radio also made that point about prioritizing the Test Championship and whatever, and I don't think the Test Championship is as much as a farce as you seem to think so, because I like the means of an end. I mean, the competition structure is a complete farce, because like, from the very start, beyond everything else with having to reschedule stuff and all the dramas like that they're trying to work through at the moment, it was a farce from day one, because India refused to play Pakistan. So each team doesn't play two of the other teams that they're supposed to be playing. So not everyone plays everyone, which is weird, and it automatically skews things, because you're just not getting a competitive balance out of that. And it's entirely because of the BCCI, by the way. And, well, I suppose also the ICC for backing down to them and letting them do whatever they want and run the game at their own behest. But I do like the means to an ends of at least that allows us to play more Test cricket and to be able to say that they care about Test cricket. Because I think all along, the players have always said things like, well, Test cricket's the pinnacle, it's the one that and it's very clear that in terms of, like, do you take the players who are available and actually, like, someone like Colin Monroe might say something different because Colin Monroe's never been given a chance to play proper Test cricket consistently, but someone like the all format players, the Williamson, Southey, Taylor, etc., Bolt, those guys, I think all of them would rank it in exactly the same way that most fans would as well, which is Test cricket first, ODI cricket second, T20 cricket third, and it's relatively obvious, I think, by their demeanors, even if they won't say it, that that's how they feel. And I think probably a lot of the people in the New Zealand cricket boardroom who are all very invested in cricket because they work in the sport for a living, Gavin Larson included, and all these kinds of people, I think they would all say the same thing as well. I mean, Larson was a stereotypical 1990s ODI specialist for the Blackcaps, so maybe there's a little bit of a skew there, but actually ODI cricket is the one that gets shafted the most of all at the moment over the last 2 years, so not that it's his choice, but not that he has any say over the schedules or anything like that, but like, I suspect the people themselves would all have said, yeah, well, this is the correct hierarchy, this is how it should be. It's just a matter of, like, them adding that word but. Like, Test cricket is the pinnacle, but T20 makes us more money. So it was always kind of a reluctant thing when 2020 started getting to dominate the sort of the fixture list, like the home summer fixture list over the last 4 or 5 years, since however long that trend has sort of been obvious. The last 2 or 3 years in particular. So, like, once you get into that kind of reluctancy, it's always like you're dealing with compromises, and compromises never lead to the best decisions. So I think that's been the cause of a lot of these shenanigans, and the seeming lack of hierarchy is because of that. Is because there's an emotional and an intellectual clash between what is and what should be, as to how that affects the Blackcaps in general. I am less worried about it than I have been in the past, because at the peak of the lesson days, I'm thinking the peak is also whatever the opposite of a peak is, the valley, I suppose. If we're tossing bats here, the low point was the Champions Trophy a couple years back. R.I.P. the Champions Trophy, by the way, which I think is the only major trophy that the Blackcaps have ever won. When they got bottled by, like, Bangladesh in a must-win game, went out in the group stage, and the preparation had been shocking the whole way up, and it was so obvious they were leading themselves towards disaster and whatever. But, like, since then, the team has got a lot stronger. There are sort of those all-format players that I mentioned before who carry the load, whether it's a 2020, whether it's a ODI, whether it's a test match. There are reliable guys who are going to perform, and therefore the team is very strong, and I think that overwhelms most of the shenanigans and means you don't really have to worry about them so much, because we're only really talking about whether Hamish Bennett should have been picked as the how many players are in that squad? 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, is it? So like the 13th man out of 13 players in a squad, which is pretty inconsequential in terms of the bigger side of it. Like you said, I don't think he's going to be bowling any deliveries at a World Cup. He might not even bowl any deliveries in this series. So you hope he gets a go in the third game ahead of the guys who were ahead of, like, Bracewell and Kugelheim. But I was looking at what a squad would look like, because it's not just that Monroe's missing. There's also de Gronholm has been batting top 5 and he's not there, which means that because there aren't a huge amount of batsmen, Williamson isn't there either. So arguably you don't have 3 of the guys who over the last few years would have been in these roles. That means whether Conway or Phillips opens, whoever doesn't is going to be batting at 3 or 4. Seifert's going to be batting in the top 4. Ross Taylor's locked on number 5 lately. and then you're getting into all-rounders and whatever. So maybe you only pick one out of Mitchell or Neesham, and then you're only picking one out of Southey, Bennett, Ferguson, and, well, not one, but three out of Southey, Bennett, Ferguson, and Jamieson, unless you drop a spinner. But Santner and Sodhi have been playing basically every game they've been available for in the 2020 stuff for a long time, and 2020s doesn't really matter so much about the pitch conditions when it comes to spinning. You just got to be able to have those variations and whatever, and bowl to scoreboard pressure and all that, and these two are excellent at both of those things, well, respectively anyway. So it's ultimately, I think the shenanigans don't affect the team so much. However, on the thing of Hamish Bennett, I will throw back to you that because I went and looked up that paragraph you mentioned about Glenn Phillips has earned a T20 recall after impressing at the recent Caribbean Premier League, blah, blah, blah. Which I guess, as you're saying that, I realised, well, we're playing the West Indies as well, isn't it? So we'd be batting against some of the same bowlers that he would have been pummeling in those ones too. So that's probably part of the thought process too. But that paragraph then ends, while Hamish Bennett has retained his spot after strong showings against India earlier this year. So I looked up his numbers against India earlier this year. He got none for 36 from 4 overs, none for 29 from 3 overs, 3 for 54 from 4 overs, 2 for 41 from 4, and then 1 for 21 from 4. From memory, we got swept in that series too. I think there were a couple super overs, but that adds up to 6 wickets from 19 overs, average of 30, economy rate of 9.5, strike rate of a pretty decent 19. But the 2 games in which he took multiple wickets were also the 2 in which he went for the most runs. So I don't know if I would classify those as strong showings per se. I think they were relatively average showings considering they were all in losing instances, but maybe that's just part of those shenanigans. But yeah, if we're talking about the 13th player in a 13-man squad, maybe it doesn't matter as much as it used to.
Yeah, I agree. We're deep in the weeds here, but I want to go deeper because I'm glad
Yes, please.
I'm glad you mentioned those Hamish Bennett stats because you also threw a bit of shade at Scott Kugelheim, and I just want to raise some Scott Kugelheim numbers here for your wild card. Korea T20 international bowling average of 41.75. So that's not good reading for Scott Kugelheim in the T20 format. However, Scott Kugelheim, T20 international cricket in 2019, he averaged 52. In 2020, he averaged 24.6.
Okay.
And then, so that is earlier this year, Blackcaps T20 international cricket, Scott Kugelheim averages 24.6, which is a notable improvement on 2019. And then if you compare Scott Kugelheim's 2020 international average of 41.75 to his 2020 career average of 29.5, that adds a bit of spice into the mix as well. And then to finish with wildcard, who was the best bowler in the Caribbean Premier League this year?
I have no idea.
It was Mr. Scott Kugelheim.
Oh, there you go.
So this year alone, because I had the same impression. Scott Kugelheim has kind of struggled for New Zealand in T20 cricket, and an average of 41.75 reflects that. However, when you break it down, in 2020, he's a pretty good bowler because he's done it for the Blackcaps earlier this year, and then he had a real strong CPL campaign where he took 17 wickets, 15.64 average, 7.78 RPO. So, if you ask me right now, who's better, Hamish Bennett or Scott Kugelheim, based on the numbers that you just mentioned from earlier this year against India as well, to me, it's a no-brainer. Scott Kugelheim should be there ahead of Hamish Bennett. But again, that's deep in the weeds, but it just shows, I don't know what it shows, but it's just weird.
Yeah, Kugelheim played 3 games against India in sort of January, February when that series was on. He got none for 10 off 2 overs in the first one. He got 1 for 39 in the next and 2 for 25 in the next one. So 2 for 25 is very good against India. It's only a shade over a runner ball, a couple wickets. That's where that average is coming from, would be that performance. Just the 10 overs that were going off, though. But it is an improvement because he'd only taken 2 wickets in a T20 game once in his 11 previous career games before that. So, maybe he turned a corner. Plus, I guess if you're going to say pick Glenn Phillips on the back of his 2020 showings and specifically mentioning only the recent Caribbean Premier League, then you do have to give similar leeway to Scott Kugelheim as well, don't you?
Yeah, and again, like if I'm of the belief that Hamish Bennett won't bowl a delivery in the T20 World Cups, plural, well, why don't you just have Scott Kugelheim, who's far more likely to be in a Blackcaps T20 first 11 than Hamish Bennett. Like, both of them shouldn't be in the first 11 when you're dealing with Tim Southey, Trent Boult, Lockie Ferguson, 2 spinners, couple all-rounders. Like, there's no real need for Hamish Bennett or Scott Kugelheim. But if you're choosing between Hamish Bennett and Scott Kugelheim for T20 World Cups, to me it's a fairly easy decision. Man, that paragraph is terrible.
Yes, it reads like a PR person really having to stretch the note, say, like, they told me to write this, but how do I make it make sense? I don't know. Like,
it's one paragraph that mentions 2 players that it's all correct. Like, it's not false, it's not misinformation. It's just very strange because it's Glenn Phillips is
extremely selective.
Glenn Phillips has dominated the CPL. Hamish Bennett wasn't so good against India. And then there was another player who was good against India and was the best bowler in the CPL this year. It's all very strange.
Which seems like an opportune moment just to dangle out a little carrot on a stick, or to the listeners out there, and point out that Neil Wagner has never played an international game in any non-test format. He's never bowled an international white ball delivery in his entire career. Just seems like something worth mentioning while we're having this conversation.
Indeed. Oh, undervalued old Wagner. Like, he could have been a machine, white ball machine.
Immensely.
The other thing, because we're in the middle of a Plunket Shield round of cricket here, Wildcard, and part of my write-up about the squads for the Blackcaps today, like, we don't need to do an audit of Plunket Shield cricket just because it's happening, and it will probably align that we can next week do a full look back at the Plunket Shield, because this is the final round of the year before it starts again next year. But there's some interesting alignment, because Devin Conway's leading all run scorers at the time of recording on Tuesday morning. Kyle Jamieson is tied with Will Williams on 20 wickets at the top of the wicket taker chart. So Kyle Jamieson and Devin Conway are like the super duper dudes of Kiwi cricket right now. Not just in terms of Devin Conway leading all run scorers across all formats last summer, Kyle Jamieson blasting onto the scene with the Blackcaps last summer. They are also the best performers in Plunket Shield cricket this summer. And to me that is rather interesting, because the best performers in the Plunket Shield right now are all a bit younger. And a couple of weeks ago we talked about, I just went back to maybe 2017, and it was like a veteran crew of Plunket Shield performers. But I think there is a deep sea change happening way beneath the surfaces of Kiwi cricket, where it's just a lot younger across the domestic circuit. And now that a lot of those younger players are entering their mid to late 20s and the prime of their careers, they've played a fair amount of cricket, most of them, I think it's going to make things really interesting, bigger picture. Like, so last episode was the cricket kerfuffle episode, and I had a sense that things were going to be a bit, well, based on the summer of transition and transformation, I think this summer is going to be even more chaotic as far as players coming and going from various squads goes. And I don't know if, like, this is part of it, but I think it's like it's a factor because, okay, the top 5 leading run scorers, Devin Conway, he's 29 years old. He's in his first little Blackcap stint. Second, at the time of recording, is Joe Carter, 27 years old. Ben Horn, third, 26 years old. Ken McClure, fourth, 26 years old. Nick Kelly, fifth, 27 years old. Bowlers, Kyle Jamieson, first, 25 years old. Will Williams, second, 28 years old, but he's only played a couple domestic games. Jacob Duffy, 26 years old. Fraser Sheet, 22 years old. Daryl Mitchell, 29 years old. He made his test debut last summer. So the 3 oldest players all have a little asterisk. Daryl Mitchell just came into like the Blackcaps setup last summer. Devin Conway has had to wait for eligibility. And Will Williams is a bit older, but he's still at the start of his domestic cricket career. And the rest of them, 7 out of the 10 players, are all younger than 27 years old, or 27 or younger. I believe that is pretty interesting. When we're looking at like just the makeup of New Zealand cricket, I believe that this could help propel some of the chaos that I believe is going to happen just in terms of players coming and going from various squads, injuries, availability, and stuff like that. Most of them are going to be replaced by younger players. Like, if you're coming into any Blackcaps squad, you're probably going to be a younger player, and you're not necessarily going to be a Hamish Bennett or an Anaru Kitchen. The only dude who I can think of is Hamish Rutherford, who does perform strongly more recently and is quite consistently overlooked. I'm not sure if his like Blackcaps days are just completely finished, but there's no like George Worker's not going to play for New Zealand again. I don't think. I don't know if you're going to see kind of I don't know if who else wildcard, maybe like a late career resurgence.
Greg Hayes, Seth Rance.
Well, more historically, like Jeetan Patel coming in later on in his career to do a job for the Blackcaps. Like a spinners, it's a bit different, but just thinking back over the last 10 years, it feels like there are, when a player needed to be called up to the Blackcaps, they were usually an older trooper, right? Like, now I believe those players getting called into the Blackcaps are going to be a lot younger, and that is changing the whole face of Kiwi cricket.
Well, this is genuinely something I've been trying to find a way to write about since during lockdown, when I was, doing a couple different sort of study-based ideas from the Blackcaps thing, and then the Blackcaps squad list came out at some point, and just looking at that squad list and it just like fulfilling what was already something that seemed very clear to me, which is that the Blackcaps do not pick a lot of young players. Like, if you consider other national teams around, like, I think thinking specifically of the All Whites, for example, if you look at the ages of some of the All Whites guys, if they were ever to be able to pick a team that would play, you'd still have Chris Wood, who's 28, 29, around that range. You'd have Winston Reid, 31, 32, something like that. Michael Boxall, 30. Like, you'd have players in that age range, which is where most of the best Blackcaps are around the moment. You'd also, though, have a lot of guys who are 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, in that range. Quite a lot of those guys coming through because of just whatever, the state of the sport at the moment is. There is this great generation of Kiwi footballers on on the emergence. And maybe there's that wave. Well, certainly there is that wave. Like, undeniably, look, you've just went through the stats and shown, like, there is that wave of people in their cricket is more of a late bloomer sport, so with the equivalent of that is more like 22 to 26 age range. There's definitely a wave of that coming through in the Plunket Shield stuff. It's just a matter of how quickly that translates to international cricket, and seats at the table at international cricket are not easy to come by. Like, there's the Blackcaps might play 5-6 tests in a year. If they're lucky, they might not even get to that. 11 players per test, most of the same players, not a high attritional sort of rate when it comes to injuries and stuff like that in this sport. Not a lot of rotation, no need for rotation if you don't play that much, especially Test Championship moment. There's more emphasis on certainly when the Blackcaps are playing up to that, which they seem to be, more emphasis on like every single result. It's not just about the series result. You get points for the games too, so you got to win them. No dead rubbers, therefore. So those opportunities don't come around a whole lot, and it was really clear looking at the New Zealand cricket squad list, like when the contracts came out, is that the very few people under the age of 27. Like 27 is about that buffer when it comes to the Blackcaps. Before that, you're a young cricketer. You might not feel as young in your mid-20s in regular society, whatever. You've been out of university a couple of years, whatever. But in terms of, like, in cricketing senses, that is a young cricketer. Will Young is only just, like, how old's Will Young now? 28 or something like that? He's about in that range. He's only just now tipping into the point where he can say, like, I don't know, I haven't played international cricket yet. This is getting a little bit annoying. And maybe he'll get a chance in that test squad. Or maybe he's just going to be the new Matt Henry who's always picked and always gets the to carry the drinks or whatever. But that was actually a notable point of that thing, was that Conway wasn't in the test squad, Will Young was. So it's nice, at least a bit of continuity there. Although, I don't know that Will Young's done a whole lot in the Plunket Shield yet, but I'd have to check that. I can't remember him doing anything. So, all of which is to wrap around a point of, like, I've been trying to come up with some wider context to make this less of an idea and more of an article, but that might be it. I don't know. Like, the Blackcaps generally are not a team that picks a whole lot of young dudes, but maybe there is that pushing through. I don't know. But then the thing with age as well is that the older guys get older, and then the younger guys get older, and then everyone gets older, and then new young guys come through, and then you're like, the guys who are stepping up at like age 23, 24 might have to wait till they're 27 or 28 to get a go, and then the Blackcaps overall like average age thing doesn't really change, but you still end up at that same kind of point where they are. I don't know, but I don't know. That's definitely something that's interesting me, because that's something I have been actually keeping an eye out for a few months, is looking at these kind of things and just like the career progression of cricketers with an eye on the Blackcaps. And yeah, it's all more I don't know, the ingredients to the recipe. I don't know what that, you can fill out the metaphor better than I can.
I think it's so the Blackcaps skewing older right now, that's a product of the past decade of domestic cricket skewing much older. And so those players, most of them had to wait longer because everything in New Zealand cricket was a bit older. So now the Blackcaps like test team is a bit older. However, everything below it skews younger, because if you're looking at other players in the mix, I did a little, so that you had the top 5 batsmen and bowlers in the Plunket Shield this summer, but you've also got Glenn Phillips is 23, Mark Chapman's 26, Tim Seifert is 25, Ish Sodhi, Mitchell Santner, Scott Kugelheim, Matt Henry, they're all between 27 and 28 years old. Henry Cooper's pretty good, he's 27 years old. Leo Carter's pretty good, he's 25 years old. Like, it's kind of across the board beneath the test team, everything is pretty young. And I don't know what that is going to mean moving forward, but I can at least recognize that it is very different to how things were, because it used to just be strictly Grizzly veteran domestic cricket when I started covering domestic cricket like this. Like, you think back to Wellington Firebirds, they had Michael Papps and Luke Woodcock opening the batting, Hamish Bennett bowling, Jeetan Patel bowling. Auckland Aces, you kind of had that bully team with Colin de Grandhomme, Colin Monroe, Martin Guptill, bunch of other players as well. So it was, and obviously the Northern Knights, they would have had, the Anton Devchiches, the Graham Aldridge, like all those sort of characters were the foundation, the core of each domestic team, whereas now the foundations of those teams are all much younger, and it just seems like a swell moving towards the test team, and I don't know what it means, but it's interesting. It is fun to explore. Right, do you want to move on to
Well, I guess when you have that thing where you've got a lot of players from us, I mean, because like the Blackcaps, it's not like they've got no one under the age of 27 and then everybody is a wide ranges above that. Is very much like a bunch of players like Southey, Bolt, Williamson played together for years and years, and then you get like this kind of little generation, I guess, and then because it's like a reaction to that fact that there aren't that many even at domestic level, like there's not that many places to go around. There's only 8 rounds of Plunket Shield a year, etc. You often do see some of the older guys come back for the shorter form stuff as well. I guess that's just kind of like when you do get a really good generation, a couple year groups in a row which are just really strong with a number of strong players, they do kind of block things for everyone else. And then when they get older and retire, then there's suddenly just like open spaces for everyone else to come and compete. And I think clearly that's what we're at right now, is just a few of those older guys have gone off the other end and retired into, their next careers or whatever. In Jeetan Patel's case, he's about to become a Spark Sport commentator. So that leaves empty spaces suddenly, and those things are rare, and so you get a whole flurry of people all rushing into challenge. And I don't know, maybe in 10 years' time, these dudes will all be blocking the next lot.